sport and all that, you know, and seeing bands and sport, I've been writing, you know, film scripts of half a dozen films. And I've been buying up publishing. I bought a couple of airlines across Atlantic. And sorry, I just had an attack of Paul McCartney. Excuse me. It comes on when I least expect it.
What are your overviews of the rock music?
As an overlord, you mean? Well, of my period back with Traffic, or you mean now, as a current?
I think sort of like all the way through. How do you feel about it? How do you, 60s, 70s and 80s?
Is exactly what it says there? Are you sure? Sorry. Let's go, do that again. Read it. They're very accurate in America, man. They you know, like things down, you know.
No, what it says is, what are your overviews of the rock music in the 60s, 70s and 80s?
Ah, okay. Here we go again, ready? Go. Go. I can just start talking, can I?
Yeah, it's on.
Right. One of complete and utter amazement, really, how people used to say to me, well, what are you going to do when you know, after it's all over? Or what are you going to do afterwards? What, are you going to get a job? And it's been going since the early 60s, isn't it? 50s, really. 70s, 80s. It's really become a way of life, you know. It's amazing. Because I was reading history of rock and roll from Alan Freeman onwards, you know, the first guy to actually say rock and roll, you know. And even earlier, you know, it went back to the turn of the century when the first million-selling single was After the Ball Is Over, you know. Victorian period, practically. And, you know, the only generation to be called teenager was after the Second World War. You know, post-Second World War generation, 40s into the 50s when Elvis came along. That's when the teenager was born. Because before that, most kids did what their parents did. There wasn't even the young teen, there wasn't even his world, you know, he just did what the father and the mother did, and that was it. You were just a young person. You weren't the teenager, you know, you weren't. So it's amazing that people couldn't see that as that became a fact, a way of life, the music produced basically by young people, you know, it's the music of the young people. It's the music of change. It's the music of rebellion, of protest, of art. You know, it's everything, really. There was no way it was going to end, you know. And I think you can't pick out periods particularly, you know, and go through all of them in you know, 5 minutes. But I think, as I said, even going back into the 20s when jazz and some of the great writers and musicians were around, you know, some of the greatest musicians and writers ever, I still think, and not because it's really my own period as being really young, I still think the 60s were the most special and unusual period ever in the development of teenager generation, young people, whatever you want to call them. Because it was the first time when the whole of the young people of the globe, of the earth, for a moment in the 67 to 69 period, came together. You know, when the Beatles did All You Need Is Love, and it went by satellite around the world. I mean, satellites have been done loads of times since, concerts and blah, 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 you know. But it was never like that, because everyone was suddenly aware for a short span of time. Everyone was joined together. Everyone was locked into this same thing, you know. And I think it was an incredible landmark, you know, in the history of. And that's what I think I feel more for the 60s. The 70s and 80s were splinters. It was a splintered period. It splintered off, you know. You got Bowie coming out of the 70s, which was probably one of the strongest things that happened in the 70s, was probably Bowie. Although Bowie was really at the end of the 60s, early 70s. And then, you know, it just fragmented. And as always, it became big business, really big business. And then the record companies just got bigger. And then technology was growing at the same time. So now you've got all kinds of games, toys, pleasure, you know, and leisure. You know, you buy an album now, you get toothpaste, a t-shirt, a bag, maybe, you know, a sweater, a scarf. You know what I mean? You walk out fully dressed, ready to clean your teeth, and you've only bought a record, you know. I don't know, it's like Andy Warhol said, everyone will be famous. Everybody in the world will have their, you know, will be famous for a second or two. And it's getting to that stage now. It's speeding up all the time, you know. You know, it seemed to be like Crosby, Stills and Nash was the whole year or 2 years. You were surrounded by Crosby, Stills and Nash. It took over the airwaves. Everyone was listening to it. That album was phenomenal. You know, it was. Now things happen and it's gone. You know, it's doesn't last quite so long. Not because of the fault of the artist, but I think because of the business. You know.
Can you sum up Jim Capaldi in a few sentences?
That's who's that? That's a guy that. Don't tell me. Yeah, he was. He tried to play drums, sing, and play maracas and tambourine at the same time. I remember him struggling away. What can I sum him up as? Struggling Italian in England. Who's I don't know. God, it's hard to sum yourself up, isn't it? I'd say a dashing, charismatic, kind of successful writer. I don't know, I guess I'm just a survivor. More than a survivor, you know. I don't think I'll ever stop being turned on by music, which is good. I think that's the most important thing. I think when I was a kid, I had an incredible amount of energy. I was very hyper, kind of a kid. And I think what you are, from the minute you're conceived, is what you are and what you remain. Changes come and go. I was basically a crazy, rhythm-crazed animal, you know, and I think I'll always be the same, you know. But I do have another side of me, which is more gentle, lyricist, writer. I do get inspired by, you know, good songs, lyrics, and what's happening in the world, you know. I wrote a couple of songs in Brazil. One called Favela Music that I thought was quite good. I catch myself when I feel that I'm doing something that's very pretentious and very contrived. And it's a terrible thing to say, but it happens more the older you get. It seems to slip in. They keep slipping in on you, you know. And I think just trying to live on the edge and stay and write the things that have meaning, you know, that say something. It doesn't matter if it's not popular for the moment, you're not flavor of the week. It's okay, it's cool. Because it comes and goes, you know. And if you stay doing what you do, I think in the end, you know, it gets through. And I think, you know, you'll feel satisfied with yourself at the end of the day if you haven't really sold out, you know.
Is there anything particular, say in the next 10 years, that if you could actually in 10 years' time look back, that you'd like to have done?
That I didn't do?
Yeah.
Looked at the contracts more closely. That's about it, really.
How do you see yourself in 10 years' time?
I didn't become a movie star. I should have done that. Forgot that. Why did I miss that? In 10 years' time, probably as a, you know, aging drummer lyricist, rock and roller, who's probably got 2 bad legs from playing football. I don't really know in 10 years' time. Will we be here in 10 years' time? Can anybody tell me that? Is there anybody out there? Anybody at all? You know, if Ronnie Reagan, you know, doesn't fall asleep over one of the buttons, you know, we might survive. I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I think there's a very good chance that the unthinkable will happen. Why not? Simply because human nature has never stopped itself from going all the way, has it? You know. I hope it never happens, you know. So I don't look that far ahead, you know.
I think survived all the way through. How do you feel about it happening in the 60s, 70s and 80s?
Is exactly what it says there? Are you sure? Sorry. Let's do that again. Read it. They're very accurate in America, man. They you know, like things down, you know.
No, what it says is, what are your own...
An utter amazement, really, how people used to say to me, well, what are you going to do when you know, after it's all over? Or what are you going to do afterwards? What, are you going to get a job? And it's been going since the early 60s, isn't it? 50s, really.
What are your overviews of the rock music?
As an overlord, you mean? Well, of my period back with traffic, or you mean now, as a current sport and all that, you know, I'm seeing bands and sport. I've been writing, you know, film scripts of half a dozen films. And I've been buying up publishing. I bought a couple of airlines across Atlantic. And sorry, I just had an attack of Paul McCartney. Excuse me. It comes on when I least expect it.
Views of the rock music in the 60s, 70s and 80s.
Ah, okay. Here we go again. Ready? Go. Go. I can just start talking, can I?
Yeah, it's all right.
Right. One of complete